part 6. These are such long chapters. I do apologize. Okay, so at the same exact time frame, early 16th century, remember 16th century refers to the 1500s. So our last image we looked at was 1535, yeah? Or 1533, I beg your pardon. And this piece, we don't know exact date, but this was made with Quetzalcoatl and Texcatlipoca. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've never heard it spoken. Over here we have Quetzalcoatl. And this is reaffirming this history and culture of these people. They're being attacked and eradicated during this time. So we have, if we go back to this image of these ambassadors, they're exploring, remember, our globe. Well, on the other end of that, this is Europe. On the other end, in the New World, in North and South America and in Central America, there's all these religions and cultures being attacked. So this is Aztec, this particular piece right here. So the Aztec culture is being attacked, and there was a decision made, and they don't exactly know this, but it's either right before the Spanish conquest or just after the fall of the Aztec Empire. They want this codex here so that people know what the religion was all about, because it's starting to fade away because of the Spanish conquest. Okay, so that is all these little glyphs down here. We looked at glyphs before, but these little picture images, they all have different meanings. And a handful of other manuscripts survive from this time that preserved pre-Columbian culture. And you may have heard that term pre-Columbian before. What it means is before Columbus. So Columbus discovers America, quote unquote, 1492. So any time before that, there's not really a lot of writing, and there's not really a lot of history that is, recorded. But because it was all orally, it was stories that were told, and then once you don't have those people to tell those stories anymore because of the death of the culture or the massive death of the individuals, then a lot of that stuff fades away. So the idea of this was to preserve some of the religious aspects of the Aztecs and get some of the information recorded. Okay, so slightly different part of the world. We're in Australia here. Aboriginals are from Australia, and they're another indigenous culture that were wiped out when Captain Cook and some other explorers came, and then Australia became a penal colony where they sent from England and Scotland and Ireland, mostly England, they sent down poachers or people who went on, wealthy people's lands and stole a chicken or stole a rabbit or something like that. I mean, we think about rabbits as free if we go out into the wilderness, but in Europe at that time, that was not the case. So the people from Europe were brought down to Australia and sent here, and their diseases killed a lot of people, and then some of the Aboriginals were wiped out as well. Okay, so one thing that happened when the Aboriginal people were deceased, they were never given a traditional Aboriginal coffin, and they were not given ceremonial rites during that death. So this piece is to commemorate all these people who died at that time without proper burial rites, mortuary rites. Okay, I don't want to say burial because not all cultures bury people. So this is something that these artists painted, these different logs, and these are Dreamtime symbols affirming traditional Aboriginal culture. All right, this one's wildly different. This is what we call installation. If you look at the titles here, it gives you some information. This is an installation piece. Installation pieces often look similar to, well, I won't say they always look like a room, but they sometimes do, and they look Like there's a lot of stuff in them, if that makes sense. There's not like a singular sculpture smack in the middle of it. Do you know what I mean? There's a bunch of stuff. Like let's back up for a second. This piece, I mean, you could argue that it's an installation, but it's really more of a sculpture with multiple sculptures in it. And then this rock down here, that might be permanent. I don't know, this particular piece. But this is a permanent type of an artwork that's set there as a memorial, right? And this is sort of a temporary setup in a museum or gallery, okay? So Pepe Osorio is a really interesting artist. This is somebody I highly recommend you Googling and checking out. Really interesting. About 20 years ago, he made this piece, and this was in the Bronx Museum of the Arts in New York City area. And this was about Puerto Rican lifestyles and how people were getting depicted in the mass media. And, you know, not as much now. I mean, you guys are missing this history a little bit. Some old TV shows will show this. But kind of all the drug dealers and all the people not living good lives, let's put it that way, or criminals, were Puerto Rican. If you looked at a New York cop show kind of thing, like Law and Order, early Law and Order. Law and Order started in 1990. It's a long time ago. But they would show an African American or they would show a Puerto Rican person as a criminal, most often, right? And you talk about actors, if you hear interviews with any actors, they say, well, that's the only parts they could get back in the, you know, even the 70s, 80s, 90s, that's it. So Pepe Osorio is showing a Puerto Rican house, what it would be like, and then it puts this police tape across here saying, this is how you see us, and I don't know what you're thinking. And these are film, like if you were on a film set, these lights would be used here. So, and there's a dead body down here as if they were all murdering. And anyway, he gets into trouble with his own culture, his own people, much the way Kara Walker did, but he decided it was worth it to have people really talk about this as opposed to present an idealized situation, if that makes sense. So only if you can understand that it's taken years of pain to gather into our homes our most valuable possessions, but the greater pain is to see how in the movies others make fun of the way we live. Like the bright colors, you know, Anglo folks don't tend to decorate their homes with bright colors. So, or, you know, the saints or whatever it would be, that would be one of those cultural clashes that would maybe play out in movies and television. Another dark piece, because we're in social protest, but Mona Hatoum, she's the one with, she does the piece with the gun with the woman's face and the Arabic text. That's her as well. This is more of a mixed media installation, sculptural. They kind of look like little miniature cages, and that's what they are. So she's a Palestinian of Palestinian descent, and she's lived in London because there was fighting in Beirut. So anyway, there's a lot of conflict and turmoil in her country. So she made this work called Light Sentence, and this deals with personal identity, the body, surveillance, and control. Now, surveillance isn't a topic yet that we've covered in this social protest, and here she explores it a bit. So the idea that the swinging bulb here, and we don't have a very good view of it here, but it's hanging down here behind here. So it's like a prison. Is this the same? Yeah, same view. It's like a searchlight and playing surveillance. And then the lockers should hold some private possessions, but everything's exposed, so there's not any real privacy. And then they also look like animal cages. So you're thinking about low-cost homes, what they used to call the projects. And they're very careful about making low-income housing these days. But back then, in the 70s, especially 60s, 70s, you saw a lot of these high-rise projects come up, and people were kind of caged up in these tiny little rooms. So that is what she's commenting on here, but a little bit different because surveillance is to do more with somebody of Middle Eastern descent. Okay, questioning status quo. This is an older piece that we're looking at from Hogarth. The breakfast scene. There's a series of these. I think there are 7. Does it tell us? I think there's 7 of these. These are in the National Gallery in London. They're quite funny. 1745. So of course we're dealing with sort of the glut and upper class is not really doing much. Infidelity scandal and death by duel. So these were distributed as prints. So these are held now in the National Museum in London. But what these were made and circulated in not black and white. I think they were green and white prints. So they're more made into simple colors. But what it is poking fun of this marriage of convenience. And what that means is she had money, but she's kind of low class. He has a title, and he has no money. So they come together. It's an arranged marriage of convenience, so that she now has a title. But look how she's sitting. A lady would not sit in such a way in such a time. Her knees are not together. That's a big no-no. So she's just kind of chilling and doing nothing there and oblivious to the fact that he's come home early in the morning, has stayed out all night, and there's somebody else's underpants in his pocket. Oh my goodness, quite graphic. And that the dog has figured this out and is checking it out like dogs like to do with dirty laundry. It's terrible. Oh my goodness. I told you there would be something shocking eventually in this book. So it's artists that are taking a critical look at norms, and this is sort of the beginning of where in the U.S. We're breaking apart from England and all. Like we're a colony ourselves, and they're pocketing all the money and living this high sort of wasteful lifestyle. And what Hogarth is showing to everybody in England is that there's all this debauchery and nothing going on, very productive and that kind of thing. That the upper classes are falling apart.